Kelsey reached her breaking point. Over the past week, her toddler had been acting strangely, leaving her desperate for answers. Hurriedly, she crossed the driveway and approached her neighbor's lawn. The mystery surrounding her son's behavior had been consuming her thoughts for days. However, as she opened the lid of the neighbor's trash can, her heart dropped. She instantly realized what was causing the issue. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. At the outset, when Travis started pointing at the neighbor's trash can, Kelsey found it endearing. She saw it as a sign of his natural curiosity about the world around him. However, as the days passed and Travis persisted in standing by the window, whining and fixating on the trash can, Kelsey's initial amusement turned to worry. By the third day, she realized she needed to take action. With growing concern about her son Trevor, Kelsey hurriedly took him to the doctor. Seated beside her son in the waiting room, a sense of dread settled over Kelsey. Thoughts raced through her mind. What if Trevor was ill? What if she had missed something crucial? Little did she know what the day ahead held in store for her. After 10 agonizing minutes, the doctor finally emerged into the waiting room and called out her name. In the doctor's office at last, he inquired, "What brings you in today?" As Kelsey began recounting the situation, she observed a peculiar expression on the doctor's face. Upon completing her explanation, he nodded, jotting down notes in his pad. "Doctor, what do you think?" she inquired. "Your son will be fine, but it might be prudent to inspect the bin. Then there may be something of significance inside on the drive home." Kelsey couldn't shake the doctor's words from her mind. What if he was onto something? As soon as they arrived home, Kelsey scooped her son into her arms when his gaze fell upon the trash can. He immediately started pointing at it. Determined to get to the bottom of things, she resolved to investigate this time. She approached the can and gingerly lifted the lid. However, upon glimpsing the contents within, tears welled up in her eyes. It was a sight far more distressing than she had ever anticipated. Residing in Tampa, Florida, Kelsey Anderson prided herself on being a dedicated and nurturing mother and wife. Amidst the daily routines of cooking, cleaning, and caring for her toddler while her husband was at work, she saw herself as the cornerstone of her family's happiness. Though the role of a stay-at-home wife and mother posed its challenges, Kelsey embraced them wholeheartedly for the sake of her beloved family. Each morning at 7, Kelsey rose from bed. After her shower, she meticulously tended to her hair and makeup, then selected her attire for the day before descending to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for her family. Gathered around the kitchen counter, they savored their morning meal together before her husband, Austin, departed for work. With the house to herself, Kelsey would embark on her daily cleaning routine, and each schrijvertje trivlisher bolts deine beleinigheid sins. However, on one seemingly ordinary afternoon, while sorting through the laundry, she stumbled up on something peculiar. On a typical Friday afternoon, Austin was immersed in work, while little Trevor peacefully slumbered through his daily nap. She retrieved the laundry baskets from the bathrooms and commenced sorting through the garments. A peculiar sensation caught her attention. It was within one of Austin's pockets that she detected something out of the ordinary. Confused, she snatched the pair of pants up and began digging through the pockets, just to find a small piece of paper, folded neatly. She slowly opened it, finding a receipt inside. Confused, she went through the items on the list, but there were two that stuck out to her. One was a bottle of expensive red wine, the other was multiple bunches of roses. But who on earth did he buy those for? Kelsey wondered about it for the entire day. Usually she was the one he bought rose and red wine for. She was certain that there had to be a reasonable explanation for this. She went about her day, doing her chores, but when Austin got home, she asked him about it right away. "Honey, who did you buy roses and red wine for?" But he didn't even flinch. Austin placed his briefcase down beside him and walked toward his wife, placing a kiss on her cheek. "I told you last week, it was Tiffany's birthday this week. I bought them to take to the office," he said. The second he reminded her of this fact, she let out a sigh of relief. Tiffany was their receptionist. Arts in their company often rewarded employees with fancy presents on their birthdays. All doubt she had felt before melted away as she pulled her husband into her chest and gave him a great, big hug. Austin and Kelsey had always had a perfect relationship. When they first began dating, Kelsey had an extremely stressful job, and she always complained to him about it. Knowing how much she hated it, he allowed her to become a housewife, and she had always been grateful for this. Since the birth of their son, they had been closer than ever before. But little did Kelsey know that this would change the very next week. It was the following day that Travis began acting rather strange. It was early that morning when Kelsey heard her son whining from the living room. She rushed to check up on him, but she was not prepared for what she would find. When Kelsey walked into the living room, she was surprised to find her son by the front door window, staring out of it as he pointed at something. Curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to have a look. She slowly walked up behind her son and peeked over him, but it wasn't anything unusual. Her neighbor, Molly, had simply taken the trash out. If only she had known the truth. She shrugged it off and picked the little boy up, smiling as she held him to her hip. But as they walked away from the window, her son kept staring out of it. But this wasn't a one-time thing. For the next few days, the same thing happened. Each time she would scoop him up, he would throw a tantrum and try to get back to the window. It was like he wanted her to see something, but each time she checked, there was nothing there. As the days continued, she only grew more concerned by his strange behavior. Was she supposed to be worried about something? She decided not to read into it too much. She knew that children were curious at his age, and as far as she could tell, he didn't seem like he was unhealthy or in any trouble. But one day, she just couldn't take it anymore. That morning, when Austin left for work, the little boy bolted out of the house and ran toward the neighbor's trash can. Kelsey was hot on his heels. What on earth had gotten into him? She snatched him up before he could open it and took him inside, kicking and screaming. That was when she decided to visit her doctor. Something was going on and she needed answers. That afternoon, while Austin was away at work, she took their son to the doctor, desperate to get some answers. But as she was explaining the story to the doctor, she could see the uncertainty behind his eyes. At first, she thought he looked concerned, but as she continued, she noticed the frown between his eyebrows smooth out. As she finished her explanation, he nodded and wrote something in his notepad. "So, what do you think, doctor?" she asked. He removed the glasses from his face and looked down at her, nodding his head once again. "Your son will be all right, but it might be best for you to check that bin. Perhaps there's something inside of it." She nodded and left his office. But as she drove home, she thought about what he said. So the drive felt like it lasted multiple hours. But eventually, she got home. But as soon as Kelsey lifted her son out of his car seat and he spotted the trash can, he began whining again. Pointing at it, enough was enough. She was finally going to look inside. Although she didn't expect to find much, her entire life was about to change. With her toddler on her hip, she locked her car door and slowly began walking across the driveway. She looked around, ensuring that no one was watching her as she prepared to snoop through the neighbor's trash can. No one was around. The coast seemed to be clear as she placed her hand on the lid and slowly lifted it. But when she saw what was inside, tears burned behind her eyes. It was worse than she ever could have imagined. When Kelsey lifted the lid, she was horrified to find multiple bunches of roses, along with the same expensive bottle of wine she had seen on her husband's receipt. It was empty. But there was more. On top of the pile lay a note. "I love you and I miss you, love Austin," it read. She could spot her husband's handwriting from a mile away. That afternoon, as little Travis took a nap, Kelsey sat in the kitchen. Her nose was red and her eyes were puffy from crying so much. All she could think about was her husband's affair with the neighbor. She waited for hours, but eventually she heard Austin's car pull up outside. When he walked into the house, he was mortified to find the dead roses, the empty bottle of wine, and the handwritten note on the table in front of his wife. He stared at her in dead silence. He knew he had been caught out. "Again, for the past few hours, I've been thinking about every time you've gone over to her house to help with a plumbing issue," Kelsey laughed bitterly. That night, the pair had a massive argument. Austin begged for her forgiveness, but she refused. By the end of the night, he left with a bag in hand. The very next day, Kelsey called a divorce lawyer, and that was the end of their love story. From that point onwards, Kelsey had to learn how to raise her baby all on her own, but she was forever grateful that he helped her uncover the truth. Eventually, she learned to move on, but she would never forget the man who betrayed her in the worst way possible.